This is the Grow Your Clinic podcast from Clinic Mastery. We help progressive health professionals to lead inspired teams, transform client experiences, and build clinics for good. Now, it's time to grow your clinic.
Welcome back to another episode of the Grow Your Clinic podcast. My name is Jack O'Brien, your host. And today we have another guest joining us who I'm really excited to have on the podcast, Marcus Pearce. Welcome.
Thanks, Jack. Thanks for having me. It's great to be on the podcast. You guys are doing an incredible job, and I know I'm in wonderful company, so it's an honor to be with you.
Thank you, mate. That means a lot. For those who are unfamiliar, Marcus is the CEO of The Wellness Couch. He's the host of the 100 Not Out podcast, CEO of the podcast network. He wears a number of different hats. Marcus, what's the hat that you're wearing today primarily?
Oh, gee whiz. My daughter had a fall at school today, so I was wearing the dad hat after having a meeting with the chairman of Go Vita Distributors, who's a big health food chain. So I was having a beautiful Greek lunch, and then I got the call that Mayor had a fall. So as I know, Jack, you've got kids, you go from one hat to another. I'm writing a book at the moment, so it was author in the morning, and then a professional hat, and then dad hat.
Yep, all the hats.
Wearing many, aren't we?
Yeah, absolutely. Awesome, mate. Well, before we dive into your story, your background in publicity and journalism and events, and then through to your insights and expertise on wellness and longevity, we've got a few icebreaker questions for you. Are you ready to go?
Go for it.
All right, mate. First one, what are you reading or learning right now?
I just started rereading last night a book. It's right in front of me. It's called The Barefoot Surgeon by a great Australian journalist, Ali Gripper. It is a story of an incredible man called Dr. Sanduk Ruwit. He's also known as the God of Sight, and he has taken cataracts out of about 150,000 people with his own hands. Really? And he's, he did a lot of work with Fred Hollows, who a lot of Australians would know of. But I am rereading the book. I've interviewed him on 100 Not Out. He's just an inspirational man, and I just had to open the book. You know, when you get a bit brain fried and you don't want how-to books, and I just wanted a great story. And The Barefoot Surgeon, it is an inspirational book.
Okay, I'll add it to my Amazon wish list. And a quick subtle plug there for 100 Not Out. Tell us what's the elevator pitch? What is 100 Not Out podcast about?
Oh, it's mastering the art of aging well. It sounds like a cricket podcast, doesn't it?
It does.
But
that's
we
why I need a clarification.
That's it. Yeah, we interview people that have lived great long lives. So, you know, why does a Holocaust survivor become the oldest man in the world when he lost all of his family? How does someone do ballet at 85? You know, Jan Smith, climbed Everest age 68. How does Sister Madonna Buddha become the oldest woman in the world at 84 to do a full Ironman triathlon? So interviewing these graceful ages, there's a big stigma around aging. A lot of people don't believe that it can be done well. So we like to defy that trend. We're just about to celebrate 7 years, 364 Not Out episodes. So it is a labor of love, and it's something that you get a little bit addicted to, hearing so many stories that you don't read about that much. Yeah, so that's it.
Awesome. We'll link that up over in our show notes at clinicmastery.com/podcast for anyone who is keen to go and check out that sister podcast. So number 2, here we go. Who inspires you, Marcus?
Well, cliche is family, and that's not to say they don't. They absolutely do. It's so easy to love your family. But I do think the exceptional human beings of the world, those that defy the odds. I mean, just using Sanduk Ruwit as an example, the book I'm reading at the moment, he grew up in a village where no one had ever been to school. A kid had never been to school in his village. And he was always a curious one. Why does the river flow that way? Why is the sky blue? Why is this? Why that? And he walked for 2 weeks to go to school in Darjeeling in India. And his parents couldn't come and see him because it took too long to go and visit. He didn't see his parents for 3 years.
Wow.
The exceptional human beings that just live the most different lives, they inspire me. So yes, of course, my family inspires me. That's an obvious answer, but the less obvious one is the exceptional human beings of the world.
Unreal, mate. What did you want to be growing up?
Always wanted to be a journalist. I love AFL football. I knew I was a softie on the field. I'm not a blokey bloke. I grew up with 2 sisters. So I love playing football, but I'm just no good at it. But I love everything else. I was like, what's the best job if you can't play football professionally? And it was commentate football. So I have been obsessed with sport ever since. Yeah, literally probably the age of 7. I was never one to not know what I wanted to do. studied journalism at RMIT, worked at Channel 9 and radio stations, did Commonwealth Games and Olympic Games and World Cup soccer and all of that stuff. So that was it. But then now, I just kind of transferred that media knowledge from sport to health, wellness, and personal growth. So I still say I'm a journalist by profession. I think live events is TV. I think podcasting is radio, blogs, newspaper. So I don't really feel like a lot's changed. I've just transitioned from sports content, torn ACLs and hamstrings, to helping people improve their lives. But, the medium is still the same many times over.
Yeah. Who do you barrack for in the footy?
I'm a Melbourne man in AFL. As a journalist, you fall a bit out of love with your team. It becomes work, but gee whiz, being a fan, it's just a whole different experience. So I still love them to this day. They are my great distraction. The AFL app is some people get distracted by social media, by Facebook and Instagram. I, after a big dose of work, I'll go for a walk, check out the AFL app and have a little listen or watch.
Love it, mate. And finally, what's a motto that you live by?
I think there's no mistakes. Again, I just spoke to my daughter Maya, who had this fall today at school, and I was just saying, the world doesn't make mistakes. It's easy to say that it does. Why do people die? Why does this happen? Why does that happen? But I think when you have a belief that there's no mistakes, you start asking, okay, well, what are the blessings in disguise of challenges, whether it's in business, in clinic, family, health, all the rest of it. I think when you can come from that belief, you're always looking for an answer rather than asking yourself a poor question. I think that is a great question, what is the perfection of what's happened?
Awesome, mate. Thank you for sharing. What I'd love you to do is to connect the dots for us a little bit more. So you got wanted to be a footy commentator and a journo and dabbled in that world, and you mentioned TV. And can you step us through to how that then intersected with health and what role you see that playing in health now with live events?
Yes, absolutely. Good question. You're going to have to pull me up if I talk too much, though, because this could go on for too long.
It's a big question.
So did the media stuff from 99 to 2005. Before I joined the footy show, I went over to Perth to meet my best friend from journalism school, Alicia Loxley, who's now at Channel 9 in Melbourne. But she was at the ABC in Perth. Went over there to catch up and met my now wife, Sarah, who is a chiropractor by profession. Mm-hmm. She was over there visiting her best friend from chiropractic college. So we connected. We fell in love. So love is the reason why I'm now in health and wellness. Because at the time I was a workaholic, binge drinking, smoking, Benson and Hedges extra mild like you wouldn't believe. And
makes a good voice for podcast.
Oh, absolutely. But Sarah somehow fell in love with me, which is fabulous. But it wasn't going to work so well. I'd come home from the footy show. Our relationship was young. We'd been going out for 2 or 3 months. I'd come home at 3 or 4 in the morning smelling like beer and cigarettes. My health professional wife is lying in the bed. Can you imagine this stinky man coming in the middle of the night? Oh. And it was obvious that I had to do something. We'd attempted together as part of our courtship, we'd attempted organic cleanses, which I would suffer through, and I would quit 6 hours in because I couldn't cop it. I needed a Red Bull and a cigarette. I couldn't do the organic diet. But slowly but surely, we worked at it. We went to Tony Robbins' Unleash the Power Within together. We did a 10-day challenge, I think it was called, which was vegetarian. We loved it, so we went vegan. And we did that for 6 or 7 years. Would you believe I stopped drinking for a period of time as well?
Wow.
And we went all the way to the edge of the cliff, pretty much fell off the cliff. And then whilst we were in free fall from that complete teetotaler, extremist way of life, everything became extreme. And then at some point, I was actually doing some work with Dr. John DeMartini, who many people listening may be familiar with. We were doing an event with DeMartini, and he said, you've gone all this way to the end. Do you feel 100% better in your diet and lifestyle now? And the brutal answer was that we did not, in terms of energy and health and all of that. So at that point, we had our chiropractic business. So I missed a dot. We came home from Europe. We'd lived in Europe for a year, came home from Europe, set up a chiropractic business down in Wonthaggi in Gippsland, Victoria, ran that for 6 years, and then moved up here to Byron in 2014. But like a lot of people in health and wellness, we wanted to apply not just the chiropractic philosophy, but really the dietary philosophies and everything that we were learning. We're like a lot of people listening. We're voracious learners, but love to apply it as well. So that's how I got into the health and wellness space. During that, I met a lot of Sarah's colleagues in the chiropractic profession. One of them was Damien Christoph, who was part of the Wellness Couch podcast network. And then back in 2012, 2013, they were 2 or 3 shows on a network and they were running an event, but they really didn't know how to run it. Sarah introduced me to them through that. Yeah, we've since then grown to about 20 shows, and I think we're up to about 8 million lifetime downloads, and I think we're running good. 5 or 6 events this year. So I'll stop now because I could keep on going, but in the interest of listeners, it's better if I stop.
Well, you've given me a few good threads to pull on there. So you mentioned events. Let's talk about events. I know that a lot of clinic owners maybe are thinking about doing events, have heard that they work, maybe they've dabbled in a few. When you see health clinic owners running events, what mistakes do you see them make?
A couple of things. First thing that comes to mind is, I'll tell it through a story. Our first wellness summit in 2013 up on the Gold Coast, it was purely to see if people they wanted to turn the podcast experience into an event. You got to remember, the Wellness Couch was 3 practitioners. So it's a relevant story. It was 3 chiropractors, and Damien's also a naturopath. That first wellness summit, I think 180 people came. $14,000 in ticket sales and $14,000 in expenses. Didn't make $1 out of it, but we had the best time ever. And so I think the message is, don't run your first and second and maybe even third event for the money. You got to run it for a true meaning. Like, we made a significant impact on people's lives that day. So a lot of people are thinking, how can I make a cash flow positive? I don't think that's the best answer from event number 1. Event number 1 is learning how to run an event. Did the people feel comfortable? Were we serving food? Was there background music? Were the seats uncomfortable? Do you know how often you get feedback that the seats weren't comfortable? Like, if you've got a long event, it's a really important thing. Do you have microphones? Right. You've got to think of the atmosphere, the learning environment. One of my pet peeves with events is particularly when people running them are at night, the attendees have been at work all day. Whether that's been with the kids all day or being at work, they don't want rah-rah at 6 or 7 at night. So if you're running events, even if it's on a weekend at 10 in the morning, just remember they've been working their butt off all week. Meet them where they're at. You don't have to pull them out of that place. Craft your event around their energy and then gradually grow and improve rather than expecting people. It's different if you're Tony Robbins and you're doing a 4-day event, because people have been building up to it for months. They've flown from all around the country and the world. They know the style. But I think if you're running an educational workshop on the benefits of posture or how to do rehab properly and all of these other important elements, if you're doing workshops, let's use rehab exercises as one. You just got to make it easy and engaging. Like, you must do the exercises. And I know you got a variation of practitioners and people in each clinic, but when we used to do those workshops, it's very hands-on. You get people lying down and doing the exercises so you can see how they're doing it, rather than just sitting there telling people how to do it. You've got to make it immersive and experiential. It's
immersive, it's experiential. Otherwise, they could have just stayed at home and watched it on YouTube, right? Your point is to make something different in person that they can't get any other medium, right?
100%. Yeah, and practitioners can often get so caught up in their knowledge space, because that's essentially where their validity comes from. Like, I went to university, I got my degree, I know all this stuff about the body. But I think we've got to bring a level of humanity to the knowledge. Are you giving them a cup of tea or coffee? Have you got some chocolate there? Have you got some food? Have you got something that... Because really, again, I'm coming from a TV producer background. This is edutainment. In health professions, you've got the great communicator or you've got the great technician. And often people are one or the other. So my beautiful wife, Sarah, who is no longer a chiropractor, she's finished her registration. So she's a retired chiropractor, but her strength was communication. She's a great technician, but it wasn't her love. She wanted to communicate, whereas others are very good on the tools. But that doesn't mean that the communication is not important. So if that's a weakness with events or even when you're with clients, I think it's really important to bring, you got to fill both buckets there. That's awesome. Talk to me about the difference between a large event and a smaller workshop or a seminar. How do you approach those differently? So let's say a room of greater than 100 people versus a room of about 20 odd people. Well, personally, for me, the bigger the audience, the more entertainment I think is important, because that this is just personally. So I run one event that's 600 people. It's theatre style seating in that there's no desks. It's in a big town. It's at Williamstown Town Hall, and it's big. So there's lots of lights. There's loud music. You've got to keep them up.
Yep.
But that goes for 2 days. If it's say 100 and it's classroom style, like they've got desks, they've got notepads, and it's a bit more of a high tier. It's a bit more intimate. Then you need a bit of that. Really important. You want touch points. You really want touch points, whether it's food, whether it's inclusions. And then when it gets smaller, then for me personally, it's like you want to know their names. With 100 people, it's hard to know everyone's names. But if you've got 20 to 30, I really think it's important to know people's names. It connects you so much more to the attendees. It allows you to go harder and deeper, depending on if you're working, you as a practitioner with clients, with their health. You can challenge them more when you use their name. It's just a basic thing. Harder to do when there's 600 in the room, though.
Yeah. So you're saying that conversational intimacy is really important, and like you tie that back to that initial point of experiential and immersion. I'm thinking about a lot of the practices and clinics will be running workshops for gyms or yoga studios or schools and preschools, parents with kids and speech and OT, and creating that immersion and familiarity, not to make a buck at the event, but to create a lifelong client or fan, perhaps.
And when you show that you're personable, if you're that practitioner going into a gym, you don't have to know everyone's name. But if there's 30 people there, find out 3 or 4. You've got to be curious and mention them in the presentation. I was just talking to Jack. He was saying that he comes into the gym here, but he's not sure when to go to a physio. Here's a few really important times when it's a red flag that a physio could really help. And then using that person's name, it brings you closer to the audience. And it also prevents you getting caught up in just talking about yourself the whole time. Because we default to talking about what we know, who we are, rather than we need to know who they are so they know if they're going to come in. I don't want to sound Captain Obvious, but it's important that you know who they are a lot of the time.
No, there's some really good fundamentals there, mate. Thank you for sharing. And I know that events, and we see through the hundreds of clinics that we help through the Business Academy of Clinic Mastery, that events can be a brilliant way to grow your clinic. But on the flip side of that, if we can just, change gears, Marcus, running events, growing your clinic, marketing all the time, it's not necessarily the skills of a clinic owner, and it can eventually start to feel burdensome for some people. And I know you've got a lot of interest and expertise around, like you said, living to 100 not out and that longevity wellness play. So can you speak to us a little bit around burnout or feeling weighed down by trying to grow a clinic and how we can perhaps avoid some of those pitfalls?
How long have we got, Jack? This is a tricky one, but life is tricky in the best possible way. I think if people are listening that work in clinic, own a clinic, whatever role you have, whether you're the spouse of someone that's in clinic, whoever you are, there are 8 key areas of our lives which require attention, and there are brutal consequences if we don't. I'm going to whip through them for the sake of time. Your life purpose or career, your movement, your social life, your nutrition, your love and relationships, your growth, your wealth, and your spirit, soul, and faith. If you don't do what you love and love what you do, you'll die with regret. If you do what you love and love what you do, you'll be inspired. If you don't move well, 42% of all dementia comes from insufficient physical activity, and that's 30 minutes a day. So you can have clinic mastery, but if you're not moving, then you get a major, major consequence 20, 30, 40, 50 years down the track. If you do move, you get vitality. If you've got a great social life, you're connected. If you don't, you're going to go down the path of depression. If you have great nutrition, you have energy. If you don't, you go down the path of disease. If you have great love and relationships, you have true love. If you don't, you get bitter and resentful. If you don't have great hobbies or growth, if you don't love playing the piano or learning a language or traveling or something that keeps you excited to look forward to go home from work, if you don't have a hobby outside of work, you'll be bored out of your brains, because that can only last so long. But you'll have enthusiasm if you've got hobbies and growth activities outside. Your wealth, if you don't master your money in your business and your personal life, you will end up broke. If you do it well, you'll end up financially independent. And then if you don't master your spirit, you'll end up spiritually broken. If you do it well, you'll end up fulfilled. That is for every single one of us. The challenge is, as a business owner, or anyone in that clinic space, it's a business of service. And so the challenge is that most of the time when I'm working with people in this clinic space, they are chronically putting themselves not last, but they're putting others before them. It's a part of altruism that's not on the brochure. Everyone's getting the water in the jug, and then you go to drink and there's nothing left. Mm-hmm. And we end up dehydrated in all parts of our body and our life. First, so having that philosophy is key. We must be aware that we can't get by and kind of sweep under the carpet our marriage or our friendships or our diet or our movement. We can't be the best podiatrist, physio, massage therapist, chiropractor, dentist, whoever you are. It's just one area of life. Because if you love that and you want to do that 40 hours, 50 hours a week, you better be moving regularly. You better be eating well. You better be seeing your friends. You better be catching up with your family. You better be growing. You better be saving a percentage of your income and investing the difference. You better be giving time for your heart and soul, because otherwise, as I've said, the consequences are not just bad, they're disastrous.
So is there a hierarchy or an order of operations here?
Yeah, absolutely. So for listeners, if you draw a triangle, this is all based on interviewing the exceptionals, the graceful ages, and recognizing their habits, and then years of my own research as well. So if you draw a triangle and you put it into 7 pieces, at the foundation, the first 3 that I mentioned here are the foundation of longevity. They don't guarantee you quality of life, but you will get a great quantity of life. And that is your life purpose or career, doing work that you love. You don't have to be a millionaire, but you have to get up and love being a volunteer at the hospital, going to work, whatever it is that you're doing, being with your kids. Rose Kennedy, who was the matriarch of the Kennedy clan, her life purpose was, purpose of my life is to raise a family of world leaders. She had 9 kids. Think of the Kennedy clan. So life purpose and career is number 1. Number 2 is movement. The people that age gracefully, they're moving regularly. They're not going to CrossFit, doing yoga and all the rest of it. They're doing the gardening, they're going for walks, they're hopping in the ocean, they're moving regularly. Big difference between movement and exercise. Number 3, social. They're the 3 elements of quantity of life. Then we move up to quality of life enhancers. Nutrition, your love and relationships. Family doesn't come first. Everyone's like, my family comes first. You know what? Tell that to a Holocaust survivor who lost all of their family. They don't come first for longevity. They come very close to first for quality of life. You want to have great birthdays, great Christmas days, great special occasions, have a great relationship with your family. You want awkward Christmas days and awkward birthdays and we don't call them and we don't see them, then muck up your family relationships. Above that, you put growth, and above that, you put your wealth. And then you put a big circle around the triangle and you put your spirit, soul, and faith. Because if you don't put your spirit, soul, and faith into all those preceding areas of life, it's just mental knowledge. It's just intellectual knowledge. And that creates burnout. I'm trying to do the right thing, but you're not doing the thing right for you. And that is your spirit, soul, and faith. Everyone does it differently. Some are introverts, some are extroverts, some are powerful cholerics, some are playful sanguines, some are peaceful, some are precise. Everyone's different. I'm talking the personalities there. We've got to do it differently. And we've got to own our uniqueness, our differences.
I can always appreciate a good 4 temperaments reference. So that's awesome. Thank you. So when you think about health professionals, which of those elements do they often let slip the most?
Social is one. So often they're giving their heart and soul to their life, purpose, their career, and their family. And that's a real bind. It's a real challenge. People talk about having, balls in the air and trying to juggle all of that. Often they've let go their social group. The other thing that's a little bit tricky for me that I find just a little bit disconcerting in the health professional space is their movement and all their nutrition is actually not that great. I know health professionals that drink Coca-Cola, like they're literally addicted to it. Like that just always weirds me out. I know others that are terrible in business. So if you take that up to the financial side of things, so many health professionals are into bright, shiny objects and they're earning good coin, but they're going straight to the top. They're kind of linking their career to their wealth instead of looking at all of those other areas, their movement, their social life, all those other areas. Who wants great wealth, but then you stuff up your health? And we all know health professionals that have done that. And then, we can look into the health challenges of if you don't have a great family life. That's another big thing as well. There are people that say, my wife gives me an ulcer. No, your wife doesn't give you an ulcer. You've got to master the art of that relationship.
Right.
But this is it's not on the brochure. People don't want to talk about it.
It's not. You're 100% right. And whatever framework, I guess, you look at these things, it's around It's incumbent on us as individuals to take responsibility for our life and not just manage, but really help each of these areas of our life flourish, right?
Yep.
A mentor of mine often says that, if you don't manage your health, you'll manage a health crisis. If you don't manage your money, you'll manage a money crisis. If you don't manage your marriage or relationships, you'll be managing a relationship crisis. So how do we get ahead on some of these things? Like for me, I'm listening and thinking, oh, geez, that's 8 areas. I've only got 7 days in the week. Where do I start?
Yeah. Well, let's open up the bandwidth. There's already areas of your life. Let's just use yourself or the listeners that you're already exceptional in. The things that you're exceptional in, for want of a better term, they happen automatically. You don't put them on the to-do list because it just happens automatically. So that for many people can take out anywhere between 2 and let's say 6 areas. Then you go, you know what, my movement sucks. So then let's just work on movement. What is it? If it's half an hour a day, which is typically the number from my research, that's the best number to go for. When does that happen? And then it just comes down to, for people listening, they're already go-getters, the people listening to this podcast. So it's like, all right, if the consequence, you've got to think of what would it look like in my family life if I was one of those 42% of people with dementia that it happened because I didn't move enough. So you got to get really connected to the consequence. And normally, because, brain fog is not going to connect you to getting it. A little bit of fatigue is not going to connect you to do it because people just get a coffee. It's actually going, well, hold on. What happens to all of my money, all of my family relationships, my kids, my friends, my career, if I'm the one that gets diagnosed with dementia? And people are going to get diagnosed with dementia earlier and earlier and earlier. And we'll still call it early onset. And there are cases where that is obviously the case. But dementia can take anywhere between 10 and 50 years to grow in the body. So if you're 20, you're not immune to this right now. If you're 30,
right,
every day you're creating dementia or you're creating vitality. So having that awareness, I'm 30, but you know what? What if I get diagnosed at 80? The average age lifespan in Australia is 83 years of age. But you know what, Jack? We suck at quality of life in the last 11 years. We are number 4 for longevity on the whole planet, but we dive down the ladder to 15th for quality of life. We get 72 good years, and then we go to the doctor. They go, sorry, mate, dementia for you. And then your life spirals, not you, Jack, because this won't happen, but for many Australians, 72 years of age, they're in good nick, and then bang, diagnosis, 11 years of sitting in a home doing stuff all. Their family relationships have gone to, you know what? Their wealth is falling apart. Definitely no growth. Definitely no social life. I don't know how much they're moving. And what is the purpose of their life in that 11 years? And that's real. I'm not even making it up.
Sure.
It's like, that's enough. I think our GDP on dementia is the GDP of Jamaica. So what we spend on dementia in Australia is every single dollar that every Jamaican spends for their whole entire life every year.
Wow.
And that can happen to every health practitioner and every, so we've got to be very clear on that.
And I love that. And I don't think you're being dramatic here, Marcus. This is the reality, right? It's like you said, you're either building dementia or vitality. You choose your medicine.
Absolutely. And I want people to make it urgent because 50 years is a long time away, but it's the consequences of those daily decisions for the next 50 years, depending on your age, the consequences are real.
Would you say though, that you could do something and it could tend towards, let's use the same analogy, dementia and vitality, but it's more to do with your perspective and intention? I'm thinking about growing your business. Yeah. It can be a chore and a burden that, drains you. Or coming from the right place, maybe it's that spirit element around the outside that really does give you that energy and vitality and reason for being.
That's a great point. So when you're doing what you love to do, you will go through, every life purpose has an SHIT sandwich that they must eat. Like every single person, whether it's Steve Jobs, Michelangelo, Da Vinci, anyone you love, you, Jack, me, there's challenges in our career, but because we love that career, that gives us, you want to solve the problems when you're doing what you love. If you're doing a job you don't love, you don't really want to solve the problems because it doesn't inspire you. You asked me at the beginning, what inspires me? When you see the challenges that our mentors have gone through, that's inspiring. And then you go, I've got a challenge in my business, but I love my business. So I'm inspired to want to face it head on. That definitely gives you vitality. That 100%.
That's unreal. Well, I'm exhausted.
I'm a little bit full on for a lot of people. So apologies if I've just wiped people out.
No, it's perfect. I think it's exactly what we need. And we need to hear it. We need to hear it straight between the eyes. Mate, that has been unreal. If people want to, read more, learn more, hear more about what you do, what are some of the pipes that we can find you on?
There's a few too many. I do go, for the people that love what we were just spoken about with dementia, I go to a little Greek island every year called the island where people forget to die. It's a blue zone called Icaria. We also go to this place called Sardinia in Italy, and they don't have dementia on those islands. It's just non-existent. They don't even know what it is half the time. There's only one little nursing home in Icaria and there's 6 people in it, and it's not because they're demented. So if you want an experiential thing, that's all at 100notout.com. On the digital side, the podcast 100 Not Out should fill your bucket there. If Icaria and Sardinia is too far away, I run an event every year called Create Your Exceptional Life. I have that in Byron Bay. That's coming up May 16 and 17. That's at marcuspearce.com.au/Byron Bay. That's where we go through those 8 areas of life that we just discussed. And then the Wellness Couch Podcast Network, thewellnesscouch.com. That's got that's the radio station per se. That's got all of the podcasts there. And I've probably given too many. Now they're in overwhelm, Jack.
We'll be fine. We'll link it all up at the show notes. And so listeners, you don't have to remember anything except clinicmastery.com/podcast. And everything will be over there for you. And we'll also link up some of Marcus's social profiles. Mate, thank you so much for joining us on the Grow Your Clinic podcast. It's been amazing.
Oh, mate, thank you so much for having me, Jack, and all of the Clinic Mastery team and the Grow Your Clinic listeners. Thanks for having me. And yeah, mate, look forward to seeing you in the flesh one of these days. I'll come down to Newcastle.
It will happen for sure. Listeners, thank you so much for joining us. As always, really appreciate your honest reviews and ratings on iTunes, Spotify, Stitcher, or wherever else you listen. Grab the show notes over at clinicmastery.com/podcast. And I can't wait to bring you another episode again really soon. Bye for now.
Thanks for tuning in to the Grow Your Clinic podcast. To find out more about past episodes or how we can help you, head to www.clinicmastery.com/podcast. And please remember to rate and review us on your podcast player of choice. See you on the next episode.